Hello, and welcome to video 2 in Phil Talking D20 about me talking about D20 systems, specifically Pathfinder 2E, Return of the Pathfinder. Now, today's video is a very cool topic for players, and the reason for that is because Pathfinder 2E has some absolutely brilliant mechanics for enabling players to be creative. And it's not like other systems haven't got those, but Pathfinder 2 has got a lot of oomph behind player creation. And one of the, I think, the most exciting things about Pathfinder 2 with regards to how kind of players should get excited and be interested in this as a system is it doesn't penalize the non-combat orientated classes. And what I mean by that is with the proficiency system that I talked about in the first video, even non-combat orientated traditional classes, like one of the classes I'm going to talk about is druid. Now, druid has often been a kind of an also ran class, certainly in my experience, maybe not in a lot of other people's, which is cool. But it's one of those kind of people that sits on the kind of sidelines, kind of goes, I've got some magic and I've got some kind of, cool, unique abilities. But when kind of push comes to shove in a lot of systems and you get in the direct firing line, you don't have the staying power that the fighter or the barbar has, or the paler. Look, I'm using slang terms for classes. The paler. Paler is now champion, so is he just now champ? Is that the new anacro slang for the new paladin in Pathfinder 2e? Maybe we could start that movement. Maybe you heard it here first. Who knows? It probably won't take off. Chimpion. Anyway, back to the druid. So, being in a position where you're in that kind of grindy dungeon and you're playing like an old school wizard or an old school kind of sorcerer or an old school rogue, you often had virtually no hit points. And often not many spells either. At low level, you were kind of like, pew, well, there's my spell for the day. I'll just sit at the back with my old crossbow and be totally freaking useless. Which is an awful experience and just not exciting or fun. But then you get into the higher levels, if you survived that long or just kept kind of dying and just coming back with Steve the sorcerer's brother, who's the same as Steve, because you couldn't be bothered to keep rolling up endless sorcerers. I will avenge my brother Steve, who was killed by the sloth demon of Dungeon 4. So you're back in the game. This time, however, you can be a bit fighty. And that's important because combat isn't the be-all and end-all of an RPG role-playing game. But it is a very important facet. And often the most critical bits of an adventure, often, not always, often involve combat. You get stuck into a situation where your level kind of 4 party have been attacked by a couple of ogres and everyone has to stick in and lend a hand. You can't kind of go, hey guys, I'm not really combat orientated. Just let me sit this one out and hopefully the fighter does okay. Because if the fighter gets walloped, which can happen, when you're the fighter, you are the front line. You are that guy going, I'll run in and get punched in the face. Why you do that, I don't know. But that's what you do as a fighter. It's a tough gig. You get in that situation where you're like, oh, well, I'll try and back him up. But it's harder to do, and you are far more vulnerable, especially with sneak peek to my next segue. If you roll badly on hit points, roll for hit points, you say? Welcome to the revolution. 2E has gotten rid of rolling for hit points, which I'm in favour of, mainly because I've had many GMs and myself, when a player rolls a 1, deep down inside, that basically means they're probably going to die. Because if you've got a D6 hit dice and you roll a 1, and you're probably only adding a 2 because it clearly isn't a favoured stat. If you've got a low hit, you know, you've probably had to buff another stat, haven't you? If you're a sorcerer, you're not going, I must have a con of 18 to be a sorcerer. You're saying, I need a charisma of 18 to be a Munchkin Cheese Master sorcerer. You can't risk having a really big con. You can't favour it. So if you've not got hugely great stats to pick from it, or, you know, you've had an unlucky roll somewhere along the lines, which can easily happen, you're in that predicament where you're going into a dungeon where people in your party might have 27 hit points and you might have like 15. And then it's like you get hit by an ogre and maybe half or 3/4 of your hit points are gone. And that's round 1. And there's probably several more rounds. And you're probably going to get hit again because, again, you probably don't have a great armor class in kind of traditional systems. So Pathfinder have taken this kind of, I suppose, quite bold move and said, hang on a minute, why shouldn't all adventurers have some capability in all fields? And you're not going to have, you know, like, people they don't step on each other's toes, let's be clear. But they are all very capable in many different fields, and I'll start to explain why. One of the best and coolest things about character creation, I'm not going to deep dive, by the way, I'm not going to hold the book up, although I have got the book with me, because you always need a good book. Like I said, there could be a skeleton around the corner, might need to clobber it. One of the coolest things about character creation is you get to pick what skills you want for your character. And this is a really, really, really cool facet of character creation, because it means that the customization is yours from the ground up. No more, you know, I'm getting, you know, 2 skill points a level. We're talking about Pathfinder 1 here, and D&D 3.5 as well, in terms of the way that they approach this. So this is both those big schools' original approaches. So we're saying, okay, I've got a couple of skill points and I can really only pick from a couple of skills. And let's be honest, if you're playing a fighter, you're probably not favouring intelligence because of just how poorly you're already supported with skill points and skill options in those kind of traditional systems. Whereas in this, if you're sat there thinking, yeah, I want to play a fighter, but I don't want to just play any fighter. I want to play a fighter who's got some capability. He's got a bit of a background to him. Oh, another segue perchance? Yes, backgrounds are a thing, and they're very cool. And again, kind of a leaf step taken from 5th edition, because backgrounds are something that I've always believed are very important. You've got to have that element to character creation built in that shows players they need to have thought about at least some kind of concept about where their character came from to bring them to where they are now in the adventure. And it doesn't have to be like, you know, a Tolkien saga. You know, you don't have to have Frodo's entire backstory to lead you to why your character turned up where he turned up with a mysterious ring that he has to take to Mount Doom. I mean, if you do, you know, there's probably a lot of work for the DM. But, you know, awesome. Be creative. Definitely be creative. It's a game where we should be being creative. If we're not creative here, where are we creative? Probably not many places. So it's important. So when you're looking at it from a perspective of being a fighter, Exhibit A. Fighter. Ooh. Now, I've mentioned hit points and I've mentioned skills. Now, we get some hit points from the ancestry that we choose. For a human, you get 8 bonus starting hit points. And then when you pick fighter, you get an additional 10 hit points, which become kind of what we're used to as your kind of what you used to roll for in other classes, like in 5th edition and 3.5 and lots of other games. But now we get 10 plus our con modifier. So you've got a con of 14, which isn't brilliant, but it's pretty good. You start at level 1 with 20 hit points. Now, sounds pretty damn good. And it probably is, but it needs to be, because as I've mentioned in the previous video, this isn't some kind of power god rampage game where you will wipe out like a tribe of level 50 goblins by yourself at level 1. That isn't how this game works. The power creep in the players is very well balanced versus the power creep in the monsters. So your 2nd edition goblin is a little bit harder and more fighty than your 1st edition Pathfinder goblin, and that's not a bad thing. In fact, it works really, really well because the world feels a bit more heroic and a bit more dramatic, and heroes are clearly needed, but also kind of capable. There's not that kind of impasse where you kind of think to yourself, well, I'm not very good, so why doesn't everyone just do what I'm doing, until you get to maybe, because there's always power curves. So like in 5th edition, you get that kind of 3rd, 4th level kind of little creep up where you're kind of noticeable and you're like, okay, I'm pretty capable now. I'm a serious operator. But you have to get there. Whereas in Pathfinder 2, they just lift you up a little bit higher. So is everything else. But it just makes you feel a little bit more kind of movie or novel-esque in your kind of capabilities from the ground up. Drink break. Oh, what's that? He was wearing a Stormtrooper t-shirt yesterday, and now he's got a Stormtrooper beer glass. It's not beer, though, obviously, it's orange squash. I don't drink on stream. Not this is a stream, this is a video. But it's the same thing, in a nutshell. It's a video. So, we've touched on this really cool kind of facet of not having to worry about bad rolls for hit dice, because let's be honest, how many times have you rolled a 1 and the DM's kind of gone, that's probably going to bugger up the story later on down the line if I kill him in the next dungeon because he's got no hit points. Or have a re-roll. You know, how many people have said, re-roll a natural 1 on your hit point dice? It's quite a common thing to hear. And the reason for that is because deep down inside, you don't want to waste time having characters that can't achieve cool story. Because although there is that long-running discussion about, is it player versus DM, is there that kind of, and a lot of groups do that, and that's perfectly fine. But the general, I suppose, more current narrative is it's a bit more collaborative. Because let's be honest, if you want to win as the DM, it's really easy. Level 1. You start in the village of Merrybrook. It's a lovely little village, and you're all lovely level 1 characters, and the sun is shining, and then, oh my god, what's that in the sky? A huge portal has torn the sky open, and what's that? It's a giant winged demon. Oh, it's a Baylor. I roll to hit. I kill your level 1 party. Well, that was great fun for me as the DM, I won. Bye-bye. That's it, isn't it? Right, there's no game. There's no game when the DM wins. The game is advancing a story with challenge and excitement and peril. Mild peril. Warning, may contain mild peril. You want that element of progression. And if characters die along the way, aka Boromir in Lord of the Rings, it just happens. And as long as it's kind of not cheap and not cheese and not like, yes, well, I know the Uruk-hai had infinite arrows and there was 50 of them because I just decided to TPK you, Sean Bean, the story of his characters in every movie, the DM TPKs in. You're in that kind of predicament where that's I suppose the more enjoyable narrative if there's that slightly more collaborative experience. So this is a big help in protecting DMs and players from that classic vulnerability of rubbish die rolls leading to characters that become inept. They become incapable. They become too vulnerable to the story that you're trying to tell. And if you start then having to nerf things behind the scenes as the DM to make it work, it starts to lose credibility. So that's a great move, a really great move. And like I said, the balance is built in because they factored these hit points in to how the world works around you as a player. So great. Also means less die rolling and rolling for hit points wasn't really that exciting. I mean, if that's the be all and end all, if that's the sum total of your joy in the hobby, roll, and then if it's not 10, take 10 and move on. I'll roll a d10. Oh, I rolled a 2. Oh, my fighter's rubbish. Or take 10 hit points. Thanks very much. Plus your con. Don't forget to add your con modifier. Now, we're going to segue without a segue, which is probably breaking some kind of universal rule, which probably has destabilized the universe in some manner, but who cares? Oh, what's this? Skills. So, we're in the world of fighter, traditionally the class of skills. However, what's this? Skills. Trained in your choice of acrobatics or athletics. Ooh. So are you a dancer or are you a powerlifter? Pick both. Why not? So you pick one of those, and then you get to be trained in 3 extra skills of your choice, plus your intelligence modifier. Now, if you've decided to be slightly smart and savvy as a fighter and chuck a 14, you've suddenly got 5 extra skills on top of either acrobatics or athletics, which means you could quite easily choose both, because you could pick one from, you could pick acrobatics as your free pick, and then say, I've got 5 now, so I'll burn 1 on athletics, because they're clearly core skills. You know, you're clearly going to want to use those to some extent. But what if you wanted to be like a double-R woodsman? But you don't want to be a ranger. You just want to be a guy who's really, really good at chopping down trees, right? That's your character's background. Oh, we're going to segue again and actually use a segue this time, restoring balance in the universe. I know I'm flicking through rulebooks. I've said don't do this, but it's fine. It's fine because I'm going to the place where there's backgrounds. So, and we're talking about backgrounds, so why not? While I'm flicking through this book, I'm also noticing that you get feats galore, don't you? So we're going to skip to the backgrounds because there is a background that is ideal, and it's sailor. No, it's not sailor at all, is it? No, I'm joking. No, you've got farmhand. Perhaps you were a farmhand or a gambler or a hermit. These aren't all of them, by the way. I'm just kind of chucking some out there so that you can kind of get a flavor flav. Street urchin, tinkerer, warrior, scout. You've got charlatan, bounty hunter. My name's Chad McGuigan and I'm a bounty hunter. Who doesn't want to be a bounty hunter? So what do these do? Well, we could be a barrister. You could be a lawyer fighter. So you prosecute, you like capture the criminal, and then you judge them in a trial because you've got an intelligence of 16, but you've also got a strength of 16. There you go. There's a random character for you. I'm a barrister, but goddammit, don't get in a fight with me because I'll break your jaw. Monk barrister. Texas Ranger, anyone? Roundhouse kicks? Chuck Norris, monk barrister. Anyway, so sorry for my random ramblings, but I do like a good random a rambling ramble. So you've got this kind of option where you're thinking about your background. So you've been a hunter or a labourer, and these give you stat boosts like your class does, because again, this is another cool thing. And I've used it several times, and it is actually very cool. I'm normally a roll for stats guy, and I do like the kind of 4d6. That's your stat pools. But again, Pathfinder 2 baked in is a point build system, and they within the core rules they give you the option for rolling for stats. They're not like you must use point build or we will come to your house and set fire to all your Pathfinder books if you break this sacred law. They don't do that at all. They go, this is how we prefer you to use it in our system. And the reason for that is you get stabler classes and character PC kind of creation. And what I mean by that is you don't end up with someone who's rolled a stat of 6, who then ends up a vegetable, or ends up so demonstrably hideous and ugly that no one in their right mind would ever go anywhere near them, or a character that's so weak they can't actually physically lift up a sword. Do you know what I mean? You avoid that pitfall, and you also avoid the pitfall of the DM going, much like with hit points, when it's really, really rubbish, and it's obviously an important mechanic of the game. I tell you what, re-roll that stat, because you can't have a strength score of 6. You won't be able to physically lift any items or wear any armor or carry a sword or survive. Because, again, there is an element of heroic storytelling that's going to take place. Now, if you're not doing that as a campaign, and you're doing like, people working in a mead brewery, and the whole adventure is being beekeepers and brewing mead and occasionally having a party, then clearly you don't need a strength score higher than 6. Well, actually you do, because you won't be able to lift any jars of honey. So it still applies. But anyway, we're going to go with farmhand. That'll do. With a strong back and an understanding of seasonal cycles, you tilled the land and tended crops. Your farm could have been razed by invaders. You could have lost the family tying you to the land, or you might have simply tired of the drudgery, but at some point you became an adventurer. Choose 2 ability boosts. One must be con, or wisdom, and then one is a free pick. And when they say ability boost, they're basically saying pick a stat, add +2. You get a lot of +2s. A lot of +2s. Make sure you read all the way through the character creation section, because I've heard a lot of people kind of go, oh, you don't get many stat boosts. You get a lot of stat boosts. I was amazed at how many +2s you get dished out. Like your class, when you pick a class, it gives you a +2, so a favoured stat of your choice. This background gives you 2 extra +2s, for example. And then when you're going through the kind of the point by creation build, that gives you another 4 or 5 +2s to your kind of stat pool to work with. So you get a lot of oomph. So you can have an 18 stat. It means you'll have obviously a trade-off somewhere, but it won't be, I've got a 6 in strength, which is terrible. You're trained in the athletic skill and the farming law skill, and you gain the assurance skill feat with athletics. Okay, it's not quite doing what we wanted. So let's skip forward to scout. You called the wilderness home as you found trails and guided travellers. Your wanderlust could have called you to the adventuring life, or perhaps you served as a scout for soldiers and found you liked battle. So choose ability boosts. One must be dex or wisdom. You're trained in the survival skill and a law skill related to a terrain you scouted, such as forest law. Now it says scout, but why not call it woodsman? Now, this is that thing about kind of reflavouring and a bit of home brewing and a bit of tinkering that I quite like to do. It's obviously these backgrounds are guides. You can have any number of other backgrounds that you can create to fit your world, or you can simply reskin one. So the life of a scout living in the wilderness, kind of helping people kind of travel through the wilderness, that kind of a vibe easily works for a woodsman hunter who travels out into the kind of the local kind of terrain, cuts down trees, and occasionally helps kind of guide people in storms back, to his village or back to his hut to spend the night, to kind of see out the storms or fend off a bear attack. So it works, doesn't it? So we're going to go with scout, and we're going to choose wisdom, and we're going to get the survival skill on top of our other skills that we had at the start. And then we're going to have law forest, or forest law, so that we can arrest trees. No, so we can know, it's like a catch-all skill. Law skills are great. They enabled you to kind of catch all. Is that forest law? Is this monster related to forests? Can I make a forest law check? Because maybe I haven't got the requisite other skill, but if it has a lot of its kind of mythology and basis in being linked to forests, maybe I know about it through that avenue. So you've got these creative opportunities with these skills. Plus, it also means you can go, I'm going to go earn a living as a woodsman because we're not adventuring right now, and I'm going to make a forest law check, boom, earn an income. Another great skill mechanic they've baked in. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it's there, and it's useful for kind of being that kind of fluff downtime killer. Bump probably earned, you know, a handful of copper or maybe a few silver or whatever. So we've got an extra skill, we've got survival, we've got forest law, so we clearly know about forests, so we can probably know about dryads and wood elves with that skill. But we're a fighter, and we take power attack. And then we power attack trees with a great axe, and are the best woodsman ever. But also dab hand in a fight versus, crazed mead drunk bear that killed a load of strength 6 mead brewers, got drunk and went on a rampage and killed some villagers. But luckily the woodsman, who didn't have a strength of 6, was there with his power attack and his axe skills to deal with said bear that killed the other party. Happy days. So it's a very simple concept, a fighter who's got a bit more about him, but it's more interesting and cooler than just being like, Steve the fighter is really dumb because he got 2 skill points and he's got strength and swim. Do you know what I mean? You've got much more options, but this is obviously a combat character, and I obviously mentioned at the start that other classes can be combatty too. So we're going to look at how to create a very cool knight, and not like a champion knight. So we're not just going to go, we're just going to play a champion or a pala, as we used to call them. No, he's going to play a druid. A druid knight? This is absurd. And yes, it is a little absurd until you realise that you can do some super cool things. So we get 8 hit points plus our con modifier, plus 8 from being a human, because it's the one I remembered and I'm being lazy. So that's 16, plus maybe we're not favouring that stat, 14, 2. We've still got 20 hit points. 16, 18 hit points. Well done. I told you about maths in the first video. You made me do maths, didn't you? It's very bad. But we're still not a million miles behind. Now, are we as good at attack rolling as the fighter? No, because he's got an expert proficiency. So his ridiculous base attack that we mentioned in the first video is godlike. But ours is still a traditional base attack. It's still, let's just clarify, we're trained in simple weapons and trained in unarmed attacks. So we've still got simple weapon proficiency. And that means that is 2 plus our level, because that's trained. So we've got a base attack of 3 plus either our strength or our dex for ranged or melee. So we're not a slouch, especially if we've decided that we're going to be an aggressive aggro druid who goes and kicks people's butts for being mean to nature. So we've got a strength of 18 because we're a cheesemonger of death, which means we've got a base attack of 4, 5, 6, 7, plus 7 for a druid at level 1. I mean, obviously we're heavily favouring a stat, and you perhaps wouldn't quite go that far, so maybe we call it a 16, so it's only plus 6, but it's still strong. That's a really good BAB for level 1, which means we are combatty, especially if we give them the right weapon, and we don't go, he's got a dagger. We get the best out of it that we can. And again, with racial ancestry feats, when we're looking at ancestries with human, we have that classic kind of human vibe where they have that flexibility. It used to be the bonus feat. You got a bonus feat. So ancestries give us feats that we can utilize to be more creative. Dwarves get the whole cool selection of very dwarven-y feeling kind of ancestry related feats. Elves do, and they increase in power curve because they start at level 1 feats, but you get ancestry feats as you level up. So your ancestry grows, your class grows in feats, and your skills increase and get buffed by an additional set of feats called skill feats, which are like flavor feats that just give you little cool options and tweaks. Like I said, we're only just scratching the surface of all this 2nd edition Return of the Pathfinder goodness. So human has a feat called, let me just check I'm getting the right one. I think it's general training. Yeah, you gain a first level general feat, a really classic style human feat. You know, you can have adapted cantrip, which gives you a cantrip. So you can be a fighter who has a cantrip. So he has the light cantrip. So he knows he doesn't have dark vision, but somewhere in his ancient ancestry, maybe an elf or a god or some bloke from the pub blessed him with a power. Gandalf, there you go. He met Gandalf in a pub, that fighter that we were just talking about, and boom, he gave him the power of light. Here, take my staff. He got really drunk, bam, oh, manifested the power to cast the light cantrip so I can have a light. So everyone else in the party is going, oh, the bloody human hasn't got bloody dark vision. And then the human goes, it's all right, light cantrip. Oh, yeah, I'm a fighter, by the way. Check out my magic. And everyone goes, what? And then complains that the light will give them away and they won't be able to sneak in the cave with their dark vision and his light. A classic. The conundrums of being the human in a party full of people with dark vision. So, general training. We're back to this, actually back on topic with the druid knight. So we've chosen human again because I'm being lazy, and this is kind of an example of how you can use these kind of feats in combination. So we're picking an ancestry feat. Again, every class, because every class has to have an ancestry and every ancestry has to have a feat, gets to choose something like this. So, general training. Your adaptability manifests in your mastery of a range of useful abilities. You gain a first level general feat. You must meet its prereqs. Blah, 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 blah. Now, what could we do with that, I wonder? Well, we've got simple weapons proficiency. Could we maybe do something like take a different kind of ability to use weaponry? Now, general feats, armor proficiency is one. Ooh, there's an option. Die hard, dying at value 5 instead of value 4. It's basically that point where you're unconscious and you start creeping down on failures to avoid death. Very useful. Fleet, increase your speed by 5 feet. What's this? Weapon proficiency, become trained in a weapon type. Ooh. So we're looking at that and we're thinking, well, I've only got simple weapon proficiency. What if I wanted martial weapon proficiency? Then my druid goes from being, oh, I can only use simple weapons, to going, hey, do you like my warhammer? Sorry, what? You're a druid, mate. Well, yeah, but now I've got a warhammer and I'm going to club you to death with it. And then did I also mention, as my druid, I'm going to choose, because again, we get into these class builds about what they can do and how they can do things. And you get a druidic order that you pick at level 1. Oh, and by the way, did I say you also get shield block in the core book as well, which means, weren't we thinking about playing a knight? Shield block, big heavy wooden shield. I've taken my general feat. And we're there kind of going, right, where are we going from here? Well, where we're going from here is cool. We've got big shield, big hammer, because we took that ancestry feat that gave us martial weapons proficiency. And then we're choosing animal companion from our druidic order of the animal. And we're choosing a horse. And we're getting a more powerfuler, there you go, there's good grammar, more powerfuler character, horse, that's going to increase and grow as we grow in level. But we aren't a fighter. The fighter can't get an animal companion horse that's going to grow and improve as they grow and improve. We're suddenly quite unique. We're quite special. And we're a druid. We're not your atypical kind of build. You know, you can do this with champion, by the way. You can have like an animal companion element in champion. Or you can have like a special weapon or a special shield. There's some very cool options there too. But this is a very unique way of showing what you can do with druid, which, like I said, I've always felt has been one of those back burner classes, and certainly is geared up to not be a primary combatant. But suddenly in this system, a couple of little tweaks, a couple of little clever picks, and you've got a very unique build that's very competent and capable and doing some cool stuff that's out of the ordinary for its kind of archetype. And suddenly you're the Green Knight, you're this kind of druidic kind of warrior champion that rides this powerful kind of majestic steed. And, you know, again, let's quickly flash back to proficiencies. We're trained in medium armor out the gate, and we've got a shield. So we've got medium armor on, we've got this war hammer, and we've got this shield, and we've got this cool mount. And people go, hey, cool, check out that fighter. And you go, I'm not a fighter, I'm a druid. And they go, what? And that's Pathfinder 2e. That's why you should be excited as a player to get your teeth stuck into this system. Because as a player, it's never been a better time to be creative. And like I said, that's just one really simple, well, technically I gave you two simple examples of what makes these classes and these characters and this combination of options that I barely touched on in truth, did I? You know, I very much only picked a couple of things to give you examples. I'll kind of continue that with slightly deeper dives into kind of mechanics that grow from that very simple initial starting point. Because what we did effectively there was we created 2 level 1 characters. We had our kind of fighter who was kind of leaning towards nature. He had this kind of woodsman background. And we didn't even touch on a background for the druid, which would have given us other options. And we didn't even touch on skills for the druid, which would have given us cool options. That's all still to play for. I mean, I suppose looking at it from a perspective of skills, trained in nature, trained in 1 skill determined by your druidic order, and then trained in a number of additional skills equal to 2 plus your intelligence modifier. So the druidic order of the animal, you have a strong connection to beasts, and you are allied with a beast companion. You are trained in athletics, boom. That's our extra skill. You also gain the animal companion druid feat. You gain the heal animal order spell. Committing wanton cruelty to animals or killing animals unnecessarily is anathema to your order. This doesn't prevent you from defending yourself against animals or killing them cleanly for food. Very nice clarification. So you don't have to be vegan. You can be, by all means. Or you can be vegetarian. Or you can clearly also eat meat as a druid if you so wish. Now, there you go. How cool is that? We've got this very fighty combat kind of geared, con focus, strength focus, probably weaker in the magic department because we've had to favour more combat-y skills, but stats I should say. But that's not a bad thing. You know, the magic that you're going to bring to the table is an added bonus, but you're also coming out the gate with a powerful mount that's going to grow and develop, and you're clearly also capable in combat. And so you're going to back up the slightly more nature-leaning fighter who is this woodsman who's really good at chopping down trees and has got survival and can kind of know about the kind of forests. And the two of you will work very, very well together because you're both capable combatants, but you also bring other things to the table. One of you is stronger in combat. The other one can back them up, but has good mobility. You've got this build that you can start to synergize a party. And this is another really cool concept. Make sure you do your character creation in a group setting, in like a session 0, because once you get people kind of thinking creatively with what they can do with these classes, you can really create some cool synergies that we'll kind of touch on in a later video about why those kind of synergies become important for that really cool mechanic that I mentioned in the first video of the beat by 10. Because if you can do something to increase the chances of that, aka make someone flat-footed, that's a -2 to their armor class. What that's actually doing is giving you a crit by +8 effectively instead of a crit by +10. Ooh, think about that. Synergies. Ooh. Anyway, that is the end of this video, which is a shame because it was bloody lovely, wasn't it? We created some cool classes, and we only, like I said, we only scratched the surface. We only scratched the surface because they were effectively very cool, semi-solidified level 1 characters. And you can already see how you can really get kind of creative and cool with it. So we're going to do a bit more on this. We're going to look at some kind of higher level stuff and what happens as you progress, and a bit more of a deep dive into our two friends, Druid of Death and Fighter of Trees, or Arrestor of Trees because of his forest lore. And we're going to crack on from there. So feel free to leave some comments. Let me know if you like the video. Give me a like, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe, because I'm going to be doing more. At least hopefully I will be. That is the plan. And then obviously keep talking to me about stuff. You know, are there things that you bog down in? Are there things that you're unsure about? Are there things that you would perhaps like to see me take an angle on? So perhaps a ruling in here that you're kind of like, oh, it's a bit fuzzy in my head, but, you know, can you put a steer on it? Or I don't particularly like this rule. Could you maybe find a way of making it cooler? Or simply, here's a rule in the system that I really, really like. Give it a shout out. That'll be cool. I'm quite happy to do that as well. So anyway, enjoyed my conversation with myself today, and obviously, hopefully some of you, and we'll speak soon. Stay safe, stay well, and keep gaming. Peace.